Hi, I'm Clate, and on the Conquer the Chaos podcast, I talk with inspiring business owners about what it takes to build a great business and a great life. That means more money, more time, more control, more impact, more freedom. So keep listening to hear the tough lessons they learned so you don't have to repeat them. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. I'm Clate Mask. I'm co-founder and CEO of Keap. And today I'm super excited because we've got an awesome guest that is going to teach you a lot about how to be more effective and more successful in your business and your life. Let me introduce to you Jia Jiang. Jia, thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Clay.
Well, Jia, we go back many years. You spoke at our user conference many years ago, and you have become an expert in an area that I think is one of the most critical factors that entrepreneurs need to master. And it certainly fits into the personal keys to success that I talk about in Conquer the Chaos. And I'm going to set it up a little bit here, and then I'm going to let you do an intro. But for all of our audience, I want you to think about this. If you had no fears whatsoever about what you wanted to take out to the world, if you had no inhibitions, if you were able to just face anything that might come in front of you or stop you and just blast through that obstacle, if you were as resilient as you could possibly be, how would that change your success? How would that change your satisfaction in life? Well, in order to get to that place, we've got to face one thing that holds back virtually everybody in some way, shape, or form at some time in their entrepreneurial career. And that one thing, in a word, is rejection. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about rejection. And Jia, I want you to give a little intro because you are like the world's foremost expert on rejection, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs and how we face that. So give a little background to the audience so that they know who you are and what your authority is on this subject.
Yeah, so I talk about rejection. I talk about how do you overcome your fear of rejection and how do you gain that resilience. So in your life as an entrepreneur or just as anyone, right, to want to succeed in life, how do you not give up when failure hits, when rejection hits, when setback hits, and how do you keep going? And that resilience separates people from ambitious people from successful people. Everyone has ambition, but that resilience is what separates them. So that's what I talk about.
Well, and you're modest. You don't just talk about it. You wrote a book about it. You've got a TED Talk about it. I mean, I think you have like 10 million views on that, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. And TED has been a great platform, but it's almost like every day I would, sometimes talk to people. They're like, "Oh, I've seen your TED Talk." That's that talk about rejection has been used in sales meetings, has been used in in conferences, just everywhere.
Well, hey, 10 million views is amazing. I'll bet you can't go anywhere without someone stopping you and telling you that they've seen your talk. So let's dig into this. We're going to talk about this because obviously it's very closely related to mindset. It's near and dear to my heart. I tell the keep going story all the time and how entrepreneurs, they come to different crucial moments in their journey and they've got to make that decision to keep going. And it's not just in the early stages for entrepreneurs. A lot of times people, they think, oh yeah, once I get to a certain point, it's smooth sailing. And it's like, oh no, there's rejection, there's challenges, there's reasons that, forces that are pushing against you at all times. And so that drive that you have, that resiliency, that willingness to just face whatever rejection is really a crucial part of the mindset. So that's what we're going to talk about. I would love for you to help the audience understand how you became an expert on this. When you told me what your experiment that you tested, I just want you to share a little bit of that with people because it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So when I just started out as an entrepreneur, and first of all, it took me a long time to take the plunge to become an entrepreneur because I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of rejection from my family, from potential customers, from myself. It took me a long time to actually start this whole process. And then when I started, and as soon as I got rejected with a possible investment from a company, the investor said no. The first thought that came to my mind is like, oh, I shouldn't do this. The investor knows, so he was a very well known investor.
Yeah.
He was an expert. If he said no, that means there must be something really wrong with my idea. Something must be really wrong with me. So the first thought I had was, I gotta quit. And then that's where it dawned on me. I'm like, man, would any successful people think this way? Wanted to quit like that? No way. And
No.
that's why I started this whole project of 100 days of rejection therapy, where I would, instead of avoiding rejection like I've always had been doing, I started looking for rejection. I did this for 100 days, and I would just, every day I would go out to a stranger and ask for something. I would ask strangers to give me $100. I would try to play soccer in someone's backyard. I would try to get a burger refill after a burger. I was trying to use. I went to a Costco and tried to use their intercom, and another day I went to a pet bar and trying to get a haircut there. So it's this type of thing, and trying to get rejected on purpose to toughen myself up. And then the whole world opened up to me after.
So
that.
let's talk about this for a second. Just the very notion of rejection therapy is beautiful. Yeah. just the phrase rejection therapy, I absolutely love it. And you gave some examples. This 100 days challenge that you did every day, trying to get rejected on something, and the fun things like burger refills, which is just awesome. And asking a stranger for $100. But what did you learn as you went through that? What did you learn about trying to get rejected? What did that teach you?
So it taught me a lot of things. It taught me how much my fear and assumption of getting a sure no was holding me back. The world, I felt we experience the same thing every day. We get up, probably meet the same people, and we're talking to this, doing the same thing, then go home to the same place. So every day it was like that. And because of that, it's almost like there's a circuit, there's a loop that's in our mind. We go to a place, we'll do certain things and expect a certain outcome. However, because of that mindset, we almost expect rejection when we do something that takes courage. That's different.
Yes.
And that we kill more ideas in our mind than anything else. So
you said something right at the beginning that I think is amazing. The assumption of a sure no holds us back.
Yeah.
And I want the audience to let that sink in. How is the assumption of a sure no holding you back? Because like you said, it kills ideas. It prevents you. And sometimes I think we want to be proud of ourselves that we knew the answer was no. Instead of well, that's stupid. Why don't we find out if maybe it could be yes, instead of finding this satisfaction and I knew it was going to be no.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, we are pain avoiding machines.
Yes,
it's by nature we avoid pain. Like everything here is built to avoid pain and seek pleasure and seek comfort. And that's why we want to be away from danger. But when it comes to entrepreneurship and personal success, a lot of times you gotta take risks. A lot of times you gotta do things that you'll probably get 90 no's before you get one yes. But most people quit way before.
Right.
That comfort seeking mechanism that we have in our mind will make us quit and not even start. So, but as you know, Clate, successful entrepreneurs, they got to go through a lot of rejections.
Yeah.
So that ability to go through those no's and get to that yes separates those people from wannabes to really successful people.
Okay. So I want to come back to this, the rejection therapy and how people do it. And I want to connect it to the point that you just made. So you made the point that successful entrepreneurs have to get a lot of no's. And that is absolutely right. And I remember early on, for me, I had this experience where I went to the, I've shared this a few times. Basically, if a bank doesn't tell you no at least 3 times, then you're not going to get the loan. I can't tell you how many times, I've talked to entrepreneurs and well, the bank said no. And I'm like, yeah. And then what did you do? because every time you get the bank to do something, it's not on the first ask. That's just not the way it works. And so, but then you take, I remember early on, I had that experience when I went home and I said, oh, we're trying to get this loan. It was actually to buy out a partner in the very early days. And I was so disappointed on a Friday afternoon because I found out that the bank wasn't going to give us the loan. And over the weekend, I was talking to my parents and I told my mom that, and she's like, yeah. So now what? Like, what are you going to do? And she was like saying, well, of course they said no. And I was like, they said no. I'm all discouraged. And then I realized, oh yeah, like I should just go back to him, just ask him again. And I asked and they said no. And then I asked again and they said no. And then I finally said, well, what would it look like if this had to work out? You've got, these credit cards that have a loan that have this interest rate. They're like, oh, well, if we did the loan, we'd have to give you a really high interest rate. I'm like, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And we got the loan. And I learned a lesson that day with banks that I've learned over and over through my own experiences and with other entrepreneurs, that you just have to keep pushing through and finding different ways when you get no's. So I think every entrepreneur to a certain extent has experienced that. And we've all heard the stories of, Dr. Seuss, and I don't know how many times he got rejected before he got his books through, or the Colonel Sanders and Kentucky Fried Chicken and how much rejection he got. And I think we all know that to a certain extent. And yet actually forging our way through all of that rejection takes a toll on people. It grinds them down and it causes them to stop. So connect up for us this rejection therapy and how we can actually practice that on a daily basis as entrepreneurs so that we can get to the success, the ultimate yeses that we want.
There's something really important that you said, Clay. That most people like that. The story is great. You went through the bank 3 times, and the thing is, that's a lot of inspirational stories will tell us that, right? Your story, Dr. Seuss' story, and all those, all those famous authors, famous actors, they all went through that, but they are inspirational stories for a reason, because most people hear them as like, oh yeah, great. Mm-hmm. But to go from that to them doing it, right? To that moment after you get the first rejection from the bank, most people be like, "Oh, the bank said no. Well, what do we do? Well, nothing. I don't know. Try to do it like reverse mortgage on my house. I don't know. Right. Other things, right? They would take us as a result. So to go from, and everyone who make the decision to give up know those inspirational stories. So it's how do you go from knowing those inspirations somewhere else into you actually have the resilience to do that? That's a huge gap. The vast majority of people have those things as stay at the inspirational level. They don't actually do it themselves. Rejection therapy bridges that gap. The rejection therapy goes from, oh, that would be cool if I'm resilient, to I'm actually resilient.
Yeah.
So what I found is rejection therapy basically teaches you to go look for rejection. And when you go look for rejection, you see the world differently. First of all, what happened to me was when I started looking for rejections, a lot of people started to say yes to me. I mean, okay. First of all, I didn't die. Before that, right. I thought I was gonna die. Like, I literally felt this is a life and death experience when I started doing this. Yes. Then I thought I didn't die. Well, it's not too bad. And then some people started to say yes to me. And those were some transformational experiences I had in my mind. Because now, not only the perceived danger was sometimes it's all made up in my mind.
Yes.
But also, the world is way more open and way more dynamic than this assumption of no I had in my mind.
Yes.
So having that mindset shift just make me want to ask more and do more. Now, when I get rejected from a bank, when I get rejected from a publisher, instead of right away just taking it and move on, that ability to say, oh, let me ask again. Let me try to change the parameters. How about if I negotiate? How about if I give you something and you give me something? How about make some compromises? Now, those abilities just all came because you take that mindset shift. Yeah. So rejection therapy give you that mindset shift and also the practice to negotiate. A lot of people want to have a mindset shift. A lot of people want to keep going, but they don't know what to say. They're like, oh, I'm going to come here again, saying the same thing. And since, of course, you get rejected for the same thing if you don't bring something more to the table, right? How do
Yeah.
you have a give and take? So rejection therapy give you the real world example and practice. So when those things that matters, things like getting a bank loan, things like buying out a partner, things like like getting funding. When those things that matter the most happen, you have the tool set to actually keep going.
Okay. I love it. So there's a few things that I want to draw out that you said. What I'm hearing you say is, first of all, when you really faced it, you found out, oh, I didn't die. It wasn't as bad as I thought it might be when I asked these crazy things. Second, a lot of times they actually said yes, and you were trying to get rejected, but they were not cooperating with you. They weren't rejecting you because you had the boldness to just ask, and sometimes just asking will get you, an outcome that you didn't expect. And so that I hear that point, and then I hear the other point that I hear you making though is that when you learn to not get shut down by the rejection, your creativity is now exercised. You have greater capacity to create because you don't just move away off track of something you're trying to do. You're in a place where you think of different ideas. You think, well, we could do it this way, because it's almost like rejection paralyzes most people and prevents them from seeing different possibilities. Whereas when you practice rejection therapy, you are not as affected by the rejection. So you can continue to create, you continue to see possibilities, you can continue to achieve outcomes that otherwise are shut down and foreclosed by ourselves mentally and emotionally when we feel that inward pull of rejection. Am I capturing that correctly?
You're not only capturing this, you're actually saying something that make me think. So great job, Clay. Because
Good, I love it.
you use the word creation, right? The whole process of negotiation and going to someone to make a request, you get rejected, you keep going. You can see that as a task, as a challenge, as a therapy, but also if you see that as a creation, that process itself as a creation, the negotiation process itself is a creation.
Yes, yeah.
Now that changes things completely, because now you're like, when you're thinking about art, right? You don't just draw a couple dots and that's art. I mean, some people do, but most people will be like, they have a process. They want to make it colorful. They want to make it dynamic, right? Now, when you have that mindset saying the result is one thing, but the process of me negotiating, that's a creation, right?
Yeah.
That's a art. And now you can try everything. Now, everything in the world is your disposal. Like you want to have fun. You want to be funny. You want to add and subtract and give and take. Now that's creation.
Yeah.
You can only have that when you lose that fear.
Yeah.
Of rejection. When you lose that fear, then or you know the fear, but you dance with it. Now you can start creating. So
I love it. I love it.
Change the mindset.
Yeah, that's why I love right from the beginning when you shared the phrase rejection therapy. It is therapy is such a great word to apply to this because when we're fearful or when we're hurt, which is what happens when we get rejection or we get rejected, that fear and that hurt prevents all kinds of great things that could happen. And so, you think about in a normal situation, therapy is designed to heal and move people forward from something that's holding them back. And that's exactly what's going on with rejection, especially for us as entrepreneurs. And so I love the phrase and I love the notion of putting fear aside so that we can create something better, see different possibilities. So I love that. I'll tell you, one of the things that I talk about a lot in the book in Conquer the Chaos is about how our ego plays games on us and prevents us from becoming our best selves. It holds us back in a bunch of different ways. And it's never more obvious than in a rejection scenario. Because what is rejection other than a bruised ego? It's just our ego saying, whoa, I didn't like that. I thought this, you thought that. And you're, invalidating my thoughts or my attempts or my view or whatever. So go ahead.
This connection that they're rejecting your request, meaning they're rejecting you, right? They're
right.
This person sized me up. It can very easily to go from, okay, she doesn't agree with my idea, she doesn't like my thing, into she doesn't like me, or man, she thinks I'm worthless. And
Right.
if it keeps going, I'm worthless. Man,
Right.
I'm not as talented,
Right.
and then those the stories you tell yourself after rejection that just gets worse and worse,
Yep.
without this training in rejection therapy.
Yep. I love what you just called out, because it is the downward spiral of thought process that you just described, which is they said they didn't like your idea. They didn't say they didn't like you. They didn't say you're worthless. They're not. You certainly shouldn't assume that you're worthless. And yet, that's what ends up happening in the story and the narrative in a downward thought spiral. Versus what I've found the most successful people who deal with a lot of rejection is they quickly create a story that is about something circumstantial or very different than them personally. So in other words, it's like, okay, like in the example of your investor right at the very, at the beginning, maybe he was just having a bad day, or maybe he had an investment that he's already looked at that's similar to this, or maybe he has, it could have absolutely nothing to do with you. And I've found that a lot of times with entrepreneurship, because we're constantly putting ourselves out there into the market for evaluation through our products and services, if we internalize every signal we get back from the market as something personal, we're dead. We got no chance. And so sometimes entrepreneurs, what I found is, even in some ways, I would even say sometimes they're being a little bit, maybe not receiving some feedback that could help them. But we do sometimes have to get into a place where we can quickly dismiss so much of the feedback that comes to us, because if we actually internalized everything, it's just too much. Now, you've got to also be wise enough to take some of the feedback and make changes and improve. But I think sometimes the best entrepreneurs, they just have Teflon skin, and things that people tell them, it just doesn't bother them. They can laugh it off, shrug it off, say it's probably because he was having a bad day, whatever the case may be, and move forward.
I'm going to take this one step further, Clay. It is 100% true that the person might not mean it, or they might be just having a bad day, or there's some circumstances that's preventing them from seeing the true merit of your idea.
Yeah.
And so that's like, that takes care of, like, I don't know, 50% of the rejections, right? There's possibilities, and don't take that personally. Now, there are people who judge your idea, go through this very carefully, used all his or her decades of experience to judge it, and still come up with the idea saying, this is not good.
Yeah.
You still shouldn't use that as a measurement for you to go forward or not. Because sometimes the best ideas are always get terrible rejections.
Right.
Like the famous example of early 2010s, right? The Airbnbs and the Ubers of the story, and you hear they're very similar, because when those technology came out, people were like, "What? Hold on, what are you talking about?
You're going to get in somebody else's car?
Yeah, turning my car to a cab so strangers will jump in so I can make some money. I'm gonna get murdered in like 4 hours. Open up my house, some strangers will come in. They're gonna let my house on fire. So and all the VCs, and you heard this examples of these VCs, the most famous, the VCs who invest in Facebook, the Googles, they're like, this is the worst idea I've ever heard.
Right.
And if you are like, wow, if these people say no, there's no way this would succeed, then those ideas would never be brought to light. So sometimes I tell people, if you not only get rejection, but get a rejection that you feel there's emotions, that's never, people say, if people tell me that's never going to work, oh my gosh, it's the worst idea I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You might have something here.
Yeah.
The worst is lukewarm acceptance. People are like, sure.
Right.
That's like, okay, if there's no emotion behind either yes or no, that might not be a good idea, because you're not striking the chord.
I love that.
You want to strike the chord, a strong rejection. The flip side of it is there are people with strong acceptance.
Yeah.
So you won't have strong emotions.
That's right. I love that. And if you are seeking, if you're in that mode where you're seeking the therapy of rejection, you can move from incident to incident. A lot of times people will say, success is about how quickly you can move from failure to failure to failure. And rejection therapy says that none of those things are failure. They're just learnings and helping you move to the next thing. And it's making you stronger and more creative and more capable in the process. Okay, we're going to keep this going, but first, a quick message for you. Conquer the Chaos listeners, let me talk to you straight for just a minute. You're running your business and it dominates your mind. It can be very difficult to take a step back and see what's needed to create balance in your business and your personal life, and to create great growth and development and progress in your business and personal life. One of the most powerful ways to gain the perspective that you need is to get away from things and immerse yourself in an environment where you're going to be inspired, where you can see possibilities, where you can create connections, and where you can learn and grow and develop. And I know of no better place for entrepreneurs than Keap's Let's Grow Summit. For years, we ran this conference as just an amazing mecca for entrepreneurship. And then, truth be told, for a few years, we didn't run it. We got back to it last year, and this year we're putting it on, and it is going to be awesome. I am so excited about this, and I want you as our listeners to not miss out on this event. It's going to be November 20th through the 22nd, downtown Phoenix, with the main days being the 21st and the 22nd. You can register for it by going to keap.com/Let's Grow Summit. That's keap.com/Let's Grow Summit. And you can take advantage of our early bird registration pricing, which expires the end of July. So if you are needing a reflection time, an opportunity to take a step back, gain greater perspective, inspiration, and most of all, see what automation, the fifth key to success, can do for your business, then make sure that you attend the Let's Grow Summit. Keap.com/Let's Grow Summit, November 20th through 22nd in Phoenix. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, now back to our chat. I want to share something with our audience that I think would be a really great way for people to apply the rejection therapy you're talking about. And then I want to get your perspective on it. I think that customer feedback is one of the most powerful ways to practice rejection therapy. I talk about this in the book. I talk about the Stockdale paradox and how we have to see the difficulty is actually the way through the problem, and recognize that we have an undying belief that we're going to be successful, even in the face of evidence that is screaming at us that, hey, this isn't going to work. And what I see a lot of times with entrepreneurs is, once they get past the stage where they're pitching their idea, they've got a product, they've got a service, and it doesn't always go perfectly. And a customer gets angry, and a customer is frustrated and upset. And how the entrepreneur receives that, I believe, has really the seeds of either great success in a business or ultimately flame out, failure. And it's because if we don't want to see the feedback and we're not embracing it, if we're so bruised by it, then the rejection actually turns us inward and it turns us away from creating a better outcome. Versus on the other hand, if we change our mindset and we see the shortfalls that we have in our business, because we all have them. Every single company that's running out there makes mistakes, messes up certain things with their customers, wishes they had done something better. But how we deal with it when it happens is really critical in how successful a company can become. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how our listeners can practice rejection therapy as it relates to customer satisfaction and customer feedback that maybe isn't the kind of feedback that we want to get as entrepreneurs.
Oh man, Clate, I love that because when I tell people about rejection therapy, and in fact, when I first started doing rejection therapy, my idea was I'm just gonna toughen myself up, right? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let rejection just fall off my shoulder and just no problem, and I'm just gonna develop this big shield. The problem with that is you are still avoiding it in a way. So I've seen people get to level 1 in my rejection therapy training is, all right, they can tolerate it. So what happens when they get rejected is like they would go, okay, yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, they would do that, right? They
Yeah.
will be like, okay, I'm not going to stop and move
Shrug it
on.
off.
Shrug
Yeah.
it off, exactly. Now the problem with that is they shrugging it off is still using one. It's still a way to deal with fear and pain. Still,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
pain avoiding machines, so
Right.
we just move on without leading into the pain. Now, rejection from the wrong people, like if from a family member, from someone who doesn't understand your product, or someone, even from sometimes investors, right? Even from those people, sometimes you got to shrug it off because they're not your customer. But rejection or critical feedback from the right customers, you got to lean into them.
Yeah.
You have to let that pain, you cannot let that pain shrug it off. You got to embrace it. You got to be
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, I can handle this. And I want to lean in and find out what exactly that's causing them to have this strong emotional rejection. And if they're not the right people, don't care. But if they are the right people, you got to care. Because
Yeah.
if you keep shrugging it off, that means you still have this trying to protect your own ego without trying to fix your product. So lean into those fear and do not turn them into a self-worth, like a crisis, and
Right.
do not let them question your goal, your resolve, but use those feedbacks and to fix your product and iterate so you can delight your customers.
Love that.
That's actually the next level of rejection therapy.
Yeah, because now you're not just shrugging it off. Now you're leaning into it and embracing what it is that can help you be better without having the fear or the aversion, the avoidance that is normally the case with people. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that because I really believe that this is one of the areas that causes so much stress for entrepreneurs, so much anxiety, and yet there's a lot of fear around. They may not like. I bet a lot of our listeners are thinking, "Well, I'm not afraid of rejection." But if we really stop and look at our behavior and how we respond to negative feedback from a customer, that's just rejection, and it's our anxiety around it, and it causes a lot of stress. And so, if we lean into it like you described, and we recognize that it is actually the way to to greater success and to what everybody wants, the customer, yourself as the business owner, your team members, it gets better for everybody. The other thing is, the thing I've learned over time is that it goes right back to your point about you want either a strong response positively or a strong response negative. You want to evoke emotion one way or the other. A lukewarm response doesn't really do us any good. And so that's really true. It's like when you learn to embrace that all PR is good PR. It's very similar to all feedback is good feedback if it's good, strong, emotional feedback. And here's what I mean by that. If a customer, if you're sitting out there as a in the audience and you're thinking, hey, I don't really like when a customer is really angry with a job that we didn't do well because we should have done better. I wish we would have handled it more effectively. Here's the thing, though. They're strong in their emotion because they care.
Yeah.
They're invested. They want it to work out. And so that's a really great gift for us as entrepreneurs that we're working with a customer who wants this to work out. They're really passionate about it. And so, I think it's a really powerful thing when we recognize, oh, they're coming at me strong with their feedback because they're actually on my side wanting this to work
100%.
Instead of being in kind of an adversarial place, and creates a lot better outcome when we view it that way.
100%, 100%. Like, you want the customers who have used your product and used it for a while and actively taking the time to give you feedback.
Right.
Because a couple things, that itself is validation. The people taking this much time wanting to give feedback because they like certain aspect of your product. And that's what a lot of people just focus on the rejection part and say, oh, they don't like my stuff and they're just kind of crapping on it, right? So, but think about why they're taking the time.
Right.
It's because of the disappointment, because they care. They part of it, they love it so much. They're like, ooh, I love this part. Only if this part can be fixed, it'd be awesome. So I'm even angry because this part is falling behind the standard that this other part that I love is building. Now, use that as opportunity to find out what is it that they love.
Yeah.
As well as what is they hate, right? So a lot of times, even if you want to ignore what they hate, lean into what they love, and then keep building on that. So now, instead of just seeing rejection as a one whole thing, dissect it. Again, if you lose fear, it become artistic creation.
Yes.
You started dissecting. It's like, why do they take this much time? What do they love? Oh, they love this part. You know what? Even if I don't worry about the rejection, let's build this up. Let's make this even better. So make them even more disappointed because this thing. I don't. So
I love it. I love it. No, that's great advice. And there's something there that you were talking about right at the end that I want to maybe dig a little deeper on, and that is how we channel the emotion that comes out of this. So you just described a scenario where you're talking to someone, you're getting feedback, and there's strong emotion. Sometimes it's negative because it didn't work out the way the customer wants, but sometimes it's very positive. And by the way, I've always asked customers, what's one thing we do really well that you like, and what's one thing we need to improve that you don't like? And it's great to hear both sides of it. But what you started to say there at the end is how you'd start to channel the positive side. And I think that, you and I were talking just before we got started, and maybe the last topic we could touch on here is how you work through this is not just, this Teflon cover that I can handle anything and I'm tough. There's a different kind of emotion that goes along with it. And it's a positive, energetic, sort of a joyful emotion. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, because I think that that's one of the keys to working through disappointments and challenges, rejection as entrepreneurs. It's actually how we harness the energy in the right way. So do you want to say a little bit about that? I know you're working on a new book that maybe this is a little precursor to what that book is, but I think that you've studied this so deeply that your wisdom around it would be really helpful for our audience.
Absolutely. So most people would think about, okay, so I'll paint a picture a little bit. I believe to be successful has three controllable components. There are a lot of components you can control, like your luck, maybe your talent. But what you can control is your ambition, the type of goal you set, the discipline, your ability to take hard actions toward the goals consistently. Mm-hmm. And then there's resilience, is what we talked about. When you get rejected and when you get failures, can you not give up and keep going and lean to them? Both the discipline and resilience piece, most people associate them with pain, with pain tolerance, and this hardcore kind of Marine, Navy SEAL type of mentality, right? You see a lot of people writing books on them. The problem with that is we are, again, pain-avoiding machines. That's what we're built, and you are fighting against human nature if you see resilience and discipline in that light. Mm-hmm. What I want to do, what I teach people to do, is to actually see these actions, whether they're rejections or the discipline, the activities you're taking toward your goals, you see them as creations. You see them as goal in themselves, rather than the setbacks or steps you take before you achieve that goal, the pop at the end of the rainbow. Now, when you are enjoying, when you're loving, when you're leaning into this creation, these processes, as we're talking about this rejection, right? When you get rejected, man, this is an opportunity. Let me paint my Picasso with this rejection. Let me just have fun with what you do. If you have that mindset, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes enjoyable or joyful. Now you are a true entrepreneur, and because you are in this thing, people from outside will call you psycho. People are like, dude, this guy, what is going on? He's like leaning to rejection and smiling when he's negotiating. Right. I just want to get the results. I just want to get the funding. Right. You can lean into those hard actions, whether they're rejections or the daily grind or activities you're trying to do. We call this grind, right? It sounds so bad. Sounds like so. But what if you see them as art? What if you enjoy the process? What if you enjoy the rejection? Now you become a true creator in the world of entrepreneurship.
What you're saying resonates with me so much, because it's very similar to what I describe in the rhythm of execution, where it's beautiful. It's like I used the word rhythm for a reason. I didn't want to use routine or rut. No, I wanted to use rhythm. Like it's enjoyable. It's joyful. There's beauty in it. It's like, music has rhythm, and an entrepreneur's life should have rhythm to it. It should have excitement and joy to it. So, a lot of times I think, by the way, I love your points about ambition and discipline, but it's that joyful way of doing it that makes it so fun. And I think it's what causes people to be able to take on bigger and greater things, because they don't look at it. They don't get, it's not a grind. It doesn't wear you down. It doesn't get you to a place where you're worn out and you don't want to keep doing it. Instead, it actually fuels you. You get excited by it and the energy flows through it. So I think that, I'm excited about whatever your next book is going to be. I know you're in the process of working on that. But I really think that will be a gift to entrepreneurs and ambitious goal-setting achievers to learn more about how to find the joy through it, and not just go through it with the Navy SEAL Teflon covering suit of armor approach. There's a time for those things for sure, and there's a place for them in practicing entrepreneurship. But I don't think that's the normal mode. I think that's kind of a certain wartime moments need to be that way versus the normal state of the way we operate with a different kind of joy in it. So I love that, and I love hearing that your rejection therapy isn't just about toughing it out and shrugging off difficult things, but actually finding a way to do it with joy and finding a way to do it with creativity and producing outcomes that are possible because we're not shut down, we're opened up.
Absolutely, and I get a lot from this conversation as well, Clay. I love when you use the word creation, right? So I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Exactly. Like again, the outcome is the outcome. But if that's all you focus on, like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People teach us to start with the end in mind, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that. I do believe that.
Me too.
You start with that. You don't just focus on that. You don't just like, that's all I care about is that end result, because then your steps becomes a grind.
Yeah.
Can you turn the process? Can you turn this hike, this journey into a piece of art?
Right.
That's really what we're talking about.
I love it. Turning the journey into a piece of art. That's a good way to describe entrepreneurship right there. I love it. Well, Jia, this has been so fun. I love what you've added to the discussion around mindset and vision and rhythm of execution. We've talked a lot about the personal keys to success for entrepreneurs. And, I loved having you at our user conference years ago. It'd be fun to have you come to one again sometime. And just congratulations on all the success that you've had. I really believe that our listeners, if they'll embrace this topic of rejection therapy and really take to heart what you've shared here, especially in applying it to the area of customer feedback, which I think is just a great place to practice it. I'm confident that levels of success will soar for those who practice this. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing all that you have. Is there, for our listeners who want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, they can go to rejectiontherapy.com. That's the company I own now. Like, if you know my story, that's the thing that I started with, and I made it on social media. I made it so successful that I actually bought the company. So
awesome.
So now I own Rejection Therapy. So go to rejectiontherapy.com. You can buy the Rejection Therapy cards. You can follow me, and if you have, as you mentioned, if you have the conferences, you can invite me to speak. So that's where you can find me, rejectiontherapy.com.
Awesome. I love it. Jia, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I'm confident that this has been helpful for people who are listening. I'll just leave it with that thought that you said kind of early on. What thoughts or fears of rejection are holding you back that could keep you, preventing you from accomplishing great things? Hope you'll all take to heart what's been shared here. And as you go out there and practice entrepreneurship, let's do some of that rejection therapy. Make sure that you're out there serving your customers well, taking the feedback the way you need to. And of course, keep going and keep growing. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Let's all get rejected.
I love it. Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe right here on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss a single episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. And hey, if you like this episode, let's get this out to more entrepreneurs. We all know that it is not easy to grow a great business and a great life. And so let's get this message out to others. Make sure that you hit the like button, that you comment, and that you share it with others so that we can help other entrepreneurs build a great business and a great life as they conquer the chaos. Keep going, keep serving, and keep growing.